Hello and welcome. I'm Chip Griffin, the founder of Saga, the Small Agency Growth Alliance. And today I'm very pleased to have with me Brent Weaver. He is the founder of UGURUS and a Cloudways Maverick. Welcome to the show, Brent.
Great to be here, Chip.
It is great to have you here. And during this holiday week, at least here in the United States, I think it's a great opportunity for us to step back and take a look at some of the advice that might be good for agency owners. And you and I both work with agency owners a lot on helping them to grow and scale their businesses. But before we jump into some of that, why don't you share a little bit about you and your roles?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the CEO and founder of UGURUS. As you mentioned, Chip, we do business coaching and training for digital agency owners, primarily kind of early stage, early growth agency owners that are not quite yet hitting that $1 million a year level. So we help them kind of accelerate and grow and build their systems, processes, and teams for attracting leads, winning deals, and delighting their clients. I'm also a Cloudways Maverick, as Chip mentioned. I just go out there and talk about the Cloudways platform. It's a pretty awesome managed hosting platform. I'm also a partner in another agency called Unlimited WP. We're a scalable WordPress fulfillment team. So got my hands in a few different pies right now, and just love being around agency owners and helping them grow their businesses.
Yeah, so multiple hats. I certainly understand and appreciate that. And us bald guys, we always have to have multiple hats available. So you've got beautiful hair though, so I don't know why you wear a hat. But anyway,
I do, and or I don't know if I do. I have hair. I do have that much.
Hey,
right?
all hair is beautiful if you're bald. But
that's awesome.
In any case, and actually we met through Cloudways because I was a guest on a Cloudways webinar that you ran not too long ago, and we decided that we should basically continue the dialogue and just switch the tables around a little bit. So it's great to do that, and I'll just put in a good word for Cloudways because I've been using them as my own personal hosting company for a couple of years now, and really enjoy the service that I get there. So in any case, all right, let's jump in. So the teaser for this live stream was that there are 3 tips that you're going to provide for agencies to scale. And so why don't we start with your first one?
Yeah, so my first tip is for agencies to make recurring revenue a part of their strategy. It doesn't have to be the whole strategy, but making recurring revenue a more important part of the business model. I think this recommendation comes from a moment when I was running my original web design agency where my business partner came into my office one day and he sat down and he just had this look of despair on his face. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And he said, well, I've been looking at our numbers and I realized that only 3% of our revenue is recurring. And that's revenue that we can count on. That's just kind of coming in, month out. And I was like, okay, I thought it was more, but that's interesting. And he said, what that means is that 97% of our revenue has to be re-won every single month. We have to go out there and farm it or hunt it or whatever, right? 97% of our revenue is having to be re-won every single month. And that just means that I have no peace of mind. And so that was the start of us saying to ourselves, hey, we should probably work on this part of our agency and so we can have more peace of mind. And so by creating that intention in our business, and I'm happy to talk about some of the details around building more recurring revenue, but Chip, in order to create that intention first was the most important thing, because over the next 3 years, we were able to grow our recurring revenue to be close to 50% of our monthly income, while we at the same time had grown our agency by over 300% in total revenue. So we weren't ever able to replace 100% of our revenue with recurring, but we were able to pretty much get to 50%, which made a huge difference in our scalability, in our profitability, but really most importantly, like the money thing aside, was just the peace of mind of being able to say, hey, we've got some recurring revenue that we can depend on to cover our costs, our salary, those types of things.
And I think what you've talked about there, Brent, the having sort of the blend of the recurring and the one-time or project revenue, that's really, in my mind, the ideal structure for an agency, because it uses the recurring revenue to give you that peace of mind, as you say, to make sure that you've got that steady cash flow to cover your monthly nut, to cover your basic cash needs. But you still have the ability to do the project work, which oftentimes can be even more profitable because you're able to make adjustments to that pricing more easily than the recurring. But let's focus on the recurring for a moment, because I think it is sort of the holy grail for most agency owners. And almost every time I talk with an agency owner, they say to me, geez, if only I could get more recurring revenue. How can I do that? And so, what is your advice when someone says, how can I bring a recurring revenue stream into my agency? Is it to look at sort of third-party services that you're reselling? Is it to do, strategy retainers? Is it, what are the different things that you would encourage agency owners to look at?
Well, I think if you're currently a marketing agency or a web agency, I think that you have an opportunity with some passive recurring revenue options that are kind of no-brainers. I think the most common in the web space is to be able to offer hosting revenue. So at that time, that was kind of our main revenue stream. We were offering what I'd call bottom of the barrel hosting prices to our clients, which is why our recurring revenue was such a small percentage of our overall revenue. When you're charging, $20 or $25 per month, it's really hard to make that add up to meaningful recurring revenue. And now we had kind of set that up as what I'll call, fake passive income. We had convinced ourselves that was kind of passive recurring revenue, that we kind of were able to set it and forget it. The problem with commodity hosting, especially as an agency, is that your clients they're not treating you like a big box hosting company. They have all of my clients had my cell phone. They had my email address. They could send me text messages. They could call me at the drop of a hat. If their email, for whatever reason, stopped delivering, most likely because of their own internet service provider, and they couldn't access the internet, right, I would get the phone call versus like a big hosting company. So we had kind of bought into this passive recurring revenue, I'd almost say like myth, that we wanted this, passive, set it and forget it, make money while you sleep kind of revenue. And the reality is, as an agency, that kind of revenue is not usually what it seems to be, right? It's just kind of, hey, we're gonna make a little bit of money on hosting. And at the end of the day, we started to make some changes in that model. But passive recurring revenue can be a way to make recurring revenue. I think the other thing that you just mentioned was like strategy retainers, things like that. I look at that as more active recurring revenue, meaning that you're having to deliver things to your clients. You're having to maintain a client relationship. Most of your active recurring revenue involves some touch points with a human being throughout the month, whether that's, getting on, check-in calls, delivering stuff, doing work, fulfilling on retainers, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you've touched on something really important there, which is making sure that your expectations are aligned with your customers' expectations. And so when it comes to passive, if you are web hosting, in their minds, you're taking care of everything. If they can't access the website, you're going to fix it for them, whether that's their ISP or an email provider that's not even related to the web hosting or whatever. And so you need to make sure that you're understanding what's in their mind and then either resetting that expectation or staffing appropriately for it.
Yeah, I don't know any agency that truly is just offering hosting to their clients, right? They might sell it as that, and they might package it as that. And what happens is, I think probably one of the biggest mistakes that agency owners make is that they undervalue their services, or they just don't realize the value that they're providing. And so if you're offering, if you are reselling a hosting, platform, whether it's Cloudways or another provider, you need to really look at, like, what are we giving our clients access to, right? Are we doing any kind of backups? Are we doing any kind of maintenance? Do my clients have access to my team and to me through conventional agency communication channels, whether that's a project management system, your personal cell phone, right? Like, if you sign up for GoDaddy as an end business owner, like, they don't give you the CEO's cell phone number, right? You get an 800 number. You're probably calling into not the United States. You're probably waiting on hold for extended periods of time. You're talking to somebody who has no idea who your business is and what you do and how your website's set up, right? And so just that access for your team for an agency that's offering hosting as a service means that you're not really offering hosting, right? You're offering like a premium managed web environment, premium support, right? Even if you're not billing the client support on a month-to-month basis, there's still value there. And so that was one of the biggest issues that we had to overcome, Chip, was really looking at it and going, you know what, I think we're actually offering a lot more here. And so that was one of the first things that we started working on in our agency, was converting that passive set it and forget it revenue into a more active relationship with our client, helping them to understand the service that they were already getting and raising our prices and saying, hey, it's been a great ride up until this point, but we had to look at things and we realized really we weren't charging you, we were charging you for things that, or we weren't charging you for a lot of things that we were already delivering month in, month out. And so in order to make this business sustainable and also work for us, right, we need to make some changes. And so we started changing our minimum packages from, $20 a month to $200 a month. And, not all of our clients went along with that, and that's okay, but we really started to make our passive recurring revenue streams active, because I think as most agency owners, you're already taking an active interest in your clients. So you want to make sure that you're getting the value for that.
Right. Yeah, you need to understand the value that you're providing. You need to make sure that your client understands that value, and you need to price for that value. And if you do those things, then you'll be very happy with your recurring revenue stream. If you are, sort of bottom of the basementing it just so that you can, check a box and say that you've got recurring revenue, you're going to end up disappointed at the end of the day.
And I think there's two, you mentioned retainers as a great, or, strategy retainers or things like that. I think there are opportunities to create highly, monthly recurring revenue driven business models as an agency, to have, let's say, one subscription that people buy into. The biggest challenge that agency owners have with that, which I think is why a lot of them keep one-off projects, is it's really hard to fit everything into like one container. And we do see that though with highly productized agencies where they're very niche down. They have a very clear customer profile. They have one clear result that they're providing as a business. And so I think there is a model where you can go 100% recurring revenue, but it takes a lot of strategy development in order to create that, right? Whereas I think where a lot of agency owners are today, they could probably take one or two of their services, peel that off into some kind of retainer package, and still kind of split their business and not keep things to, not have to go all in on a niche per se yet, but they can be able to offer recurring revenue packages to kind of build that up. And we did a little bit of that, but I'd say our main thing was really productizing our web care plans and being able to snap some marketing on top of that. And that was the main way that we went up to 50% recurring revenue.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I've seen more digital agencies offering these days is sort of that hybrid where they'll sell a website as a subscription. So instead of charging you a web development fee and then some ongoing maintenance fee, they're sort of breaking it out. And so it becomes some hybrid between recurring revenue and customer financing and those kinds of things. What are you seeing, and what are your thoughts, since I know you work with so many digital agencies?
Yeah, I mean, it's what role do you play in your client's business? There are plenty of financing options available out there. If that's really the goal, is that you're trying to get clients to buy that maybe can't afford the lump sum of a website. So I think in terms of that, I don't really view pay plans as true recurring revenue, Chip. I view that as a form of financing with your client, right? What's the difference between a client putting their website project on their American Express card and paying 11% interest versus paying you a payment plan over, let's say, 12 months? Basically, in that case, what you're really trying to do is get the client to, say yes to a lower price or to your price by cash flowing it for the customer. So you're basically providing the client a bank service, because you're going in there, and it doesn't mean that you're going to get to, spread your work over 12 months, right? You're putting all of your work to build a client a website up front. So that means that you're carrying a lot of risk in the relationship, and then you're hoping that, your client's going to actually fulfill on that 12-month agreement. So one thing that I'd recommend for agencies that are considering a pay plan model or considering a website as a subscription model is, is it really worth it? Like, are you going to get that many more sales than just getting better at sales on the front end and maybe encouraging your client, giving them instructions and options for how to finance a website, right? One of the things that we did, Chip, was we got a really good credit partner, and they were able to provide our clients credit for marketing investments. We also got links and partnerships with like PayPal credit. And so just being at the sales table with the client and saying, hey, your website's going to cost you $20,000. And they're like, wow, we don't have $20,000 right now, right? It's like, well, if this is going to be the investment that gets your business to the next level, here are some options to help you finance this, right? So that's something that we did in the sales process that kind of protected our agency from becoming a bank. But if that's not something that your clients are willing to do, then you can definitely do website as a subscription service or as a payment plan. I think maybe what you're referencing too is like a website as a lease model where your client never actually owns the website. And I think there are some people out there that are doing this. Honestly, Chip, I've probably gotten better results by putting effort into the marketing and sales channels and getting a lot more revenue up front for those types of projects, and then build a model where you're providing a service ongoing for that value, right? I think that creates a lot stickier of a relationship versus somebody who buys a website, and they're paying it off for 12 or 24 months. And then when they're done paying that off, right, they could just leave your service or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I think you made some great points there. Website as a lease to me is a recipe for disaster. That is basically just creating a future crisis at some unknown point in time because no client's going to go away and say, okay, I'm happy to just start over from scratch, right? So that's a non-winner in my book. And I agree with you that that your job as an agency is not to be the financier of it. To me, website as a subscription works if you've got some sort of a site that's going to require a lot of ongoing effort. And so you're not just spreading the payments out over time, but you're spreading the work out over time as well. And in those cases, it might make sense.
So totally, 100%, Chip. And one thing I want to make a point on here is there's this desire for a lot of agencies that are struggling with selling, that they convince themselves if this was cheaper, if
right.
It was less expensive, I would sign more clients. And so we pull out I was going to pull out a calculator, but I realized our calculators are now our phone. But we pull out the calculator app on our phone and we start to play the calculator game. And I call it, the calculator game is like, oh, if I sold, 25 websites a month at, $300 a month, like I'd be a millionaire, right? And the reality is that a lot of the same people that are convincing themselves of a volume model are also the same people that are already really bad or they have not developed their sales skills. And if they, in order to build a scalable model, right? So I'll give you an example. One of the companies I'm a partner and investor in is Unlimited WP, right? We have 50 people right now on that team, 50 developers that are serving clients, right? So we have packages that are as low as $500 a month and up to $2,000 a month. But we have like a whole marketing team, and everybody that's a part of that company is like really good at marketing and client acquisition, and we're really good at sales. I mean, I'm not like trying to brag. I'm just saying that like we chose that model after we were able to prove that as a viable business model, and we had the right people on the team. So if you're out there right now, like I can sell a $50,000 website or a $100,000 website. I'm not really worried about that. That's not the challenge for me. It's how do you create a really scalable business? But if you're somebody out there who's struggling to sell a $10,000 website, you're probably going to still struggle to build a scalable, website system of commodity level prices, right? Like it's going to be even worse for you because you're not getting any upfront money and you're having to basically finance and take it on the chin to be able to provide that service.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you can't sell onesie twosies, then what makes you think you're going to be able to sell, at volume? So, you have to be realistic, and you have to take out that calculator and do the math and try to figure out, okay, is this actually realistic? Can I do that? But all right. So let's move on to the second tip here, and you talk about the value of Ascension Framework. So explain what an Ascension Framework is and how an agency owner can use that to their advantage.
Yeah, so an Ascension framework, is where you have a client who's going to come in and they're going to start buying at, a certain like entry level point with your agency, right? So maybe you're a full service digital marketing or PR firm, and you've got a client avatar who's an earlier stage business, and they're kind of just starting out, right? You want to serve that avatar. You've made a strategic decision to serve that avatar, and so you've got a tier. Maybe it's $1,000 a month, or if it's a one-time project, it's $10,000, right? You've got a tier of service that meets their needs. And what you want to do is create your business model to where your goal is to make them successful. So successful that they eventually become your next avatar up your value ladder, and they're then able to spend more money with your agency over time. So that's a basic Ascension model where you've got you're working with your clients to make them successful, and then you're potentially getting them to spend more with your business over time. I mean, that's kind of the golden ticket with any business model, right? So that's basically an Ascension model. And one thing that we found was we weren't building in Ascension. We had an Ascension model, but we didn't build any path to ascend our clients in our system. So that's a really easy win for agency owners to start increasing their revenue, is to create built-in checkpoints with your clients on all tiers. And let me give you an example of that. We had our base, hosting web care plan at, let's say, $200 a month. And we obviously wanted our clients to spend maybe $500 a month or more, right? And prior to building this in, we had these clients on $200 a month, and it was kind of set it and forget it, right? Our team delivered a great service. But what we did was we came back and said, look, let's add a quarterly strategy meeting with those clients. So it's a perceived value add. We're going to sit down with them. We're going to look at their website stats. We're going to look at their analytics. We're going to look at where they're getting their traffic from, look at SEO, right? We're going to maybe spend a half an hour with a client, kind of do a quick little review of what's going on with their website, make some recommendations, right? So by adding this call, not only was it a perceived value add to these $200 a month hosting web care plans, but those conversations with essentially an account executive became a feeder for one-off projects, and also became a feeder to create strategies to grow the website's importance in their business. And so at first we were looking at like, we're gonna spend money having to meet with our clients every quarter, every month. But then it was like, wait a minute, this is a path to ascension. This is a path to getting them up to the next level. And so that's something that we integrate even in our business at UGURUS, which is to make sure that our sales and strategy team is meeting with our clients on a regular basis and checking in with them and making sure that we're creating those game plans to help them grow their business and get up to those next levels.
Yeah, and I think that's, you've touched on something here that's a really important thing to keep in mind, particularly as you're bringing in more recurring revenue into your business, going back to the first thing we talked about, because you have to make sure that you're continuing to evolve your relationship with your clients. Too many agencies simply, they sign up the recurring revenue in whatever fashion it is, and they start doing something and the client's happy and they assume, okay, we'll just keep doing this over and over and over again. The reality is that if you're succeeding in the work that you're doing, you should be creating that pathway to a new and enhanced relationship with your agency, but you need to continue to think in an evolutionary way about that relationship and not just rest on your laurels.
Exactly. I mean, I think too is looking at how much of your business growth is coming from net new business versus your existing customer base. I mean, I think there's, a bunch of different, stats out there. Existing customers are 10 times easier to sell to than new customers. And at that same time that my business partner found out that 3% of our revenue was coming from recurring, and we wanted to change that, we also saw that over 80% of our revenue each year was from net new business. And so we were like, wow, we could probably just call our existing customers more often and they'd be happier and we'd probably make a lot more money, right? So I think It's both about, Ascension models, frameworks to kind of ascend your revenue are not just about like trying to constantly upsell, but they're also just about making your current clients happier with the service that you're providing and getting also customer development insights. And so that's definitely a big kind of strategy that you can use to grow more peace of mind in your business.
Well, and the other thing is, I don't know about you, but I get asked a lot, how can I raise prices on my existing clients? And some people like to put automatic escalators into contracts and things like that, or they want to be able to go and say, well, my costs have gone up, so your costs are going up. And to me, that's silly. using that Ascension Framework allows you to have something new to sell them. And so you can reset your pricing by selling them something different, something new, something better. And that's a far more optimal solution than trying to figure out how to nickel and dime them on a price increase.
Yeah, I love that, Chip.
Excellent. So if I've got this laddered framework, and I've got my account managers having these regular conversations with clients, how do I get the team that's doing implementation to also think about how can I generate more revenue? Because I think that's one of the challenges as agencies grow and as they try to figure out how to scale, is taking it so that it's not just the owner or not just the executive team that's figuring these things out, but you really need to get your whole team up to speed on moving up the ladder.
Right. I mean, I think too, enrolling your team in your business goals is definitely an important thing, right? Like, we used to kind of imagine that the business functioned different, separately than the developers and the designers. Like, we protected their time and their minds from oh, don't make them sell, or don't make them talk about hourly rates, or it'd be terrible if our team found out what we charge per hour, because they'd all leave and go out on their own. And we kind of had this misconception that the team couldn't handle understanding how the business worked. And, that came down to tracking time and tracking hours in the business, and also, having team members tap to sell things. So our web care team, we started enrolling them in how to do small, not upsells, but how to provide solutions to clients to make money, how to identify when somebody needed more. Instead of telling somebody, hey, no, this is not in scope, we can't do this for you. Instead, saying, hey, we would love to do this for you. Let's pull in our account executive and make sure that we can craft the right solution for this and get this implemented into your project. And so the more we enrolled our team into those types of conversations, I think the more business opportunity that we were able to develop, to the point where our web care desk was one of our most profitable departments in our company, because they became so good at identifying opportunities and solving problems for clients, and clients were happy to pay for that kind of service because they were so good at providing that level of care to our clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of roles, that brings us to the third tip here, and that is that you advise that folks should abstract away highly specialized roles that are not core to the value proposition of the agency. So explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, and that sounds kind of fancy, but basically, instead of having
you wrote it, not me, Brent.
Well, so you have a core business model, right? Let's say it's PR, or let's say it's marketing, or it's building websites, right? And sometimes in those business models, there's highly specialized roles that you sometimes use but don't always use. So I'll give you an example. We, as a website development company, we provided web hosting as a service to our clients, and we had to have servers, and we had to have somebody in the office that knew how to set up servers, how to manage servers, how to make sure that we always had the security and the backups and all that kind of stuff. Now, we didn't have enough websites. We had about 300 clients under active management, and that might sound like a lot of websites, but it was only a handful of servers, maybe 10 servers that we provided that provided that infrastructure, maybe 15 or something like that. And so we didn't have enough hosting infrastructure to have a full-time sysadmin. Even if we did, right, one full-time sysadmin, what happens if that hosting's 24/7, right? So what happens if you have one full-time person and they ever want to go on a vacation, right? I mean, it's just it doesn't really work as a business model. And so we did what we thought that you had to do, which was have somebody in the office that we had to pay a lot of money to. They weren't always busy, right? And sometimes they were way too busy, because hosting, when it goes down, everything falls apart. And so what we found was shifting our instead of having an internal DevOps person, which we sometimes use but not always use, this kind of single point of failure, if we can abstract that to a cloud team, to a larger, kind of software as a service infrastructure like Cloudways, instead of us having to have a DevOps person in our office that's, can never go on vacation, and whenever we have a problem, their whole life is ruined, they're working around the clock. If we can abstract that role to a subscription type service, that could free us up, right? Either free up that person to become a more high value team member, where they're not having to lose sleep at night about what happens when we get hacked by Russians or something, right? Which was literally the case for us, right? Was somebody on the team lived in a high stress bubble, And whenever anything happened to the server environment like that, we just barraged him with like angry text messages and emails and things like that. So we abstracted that role into a cloud service like Cloudways. And all of a sudden we had a whole army of sysadmins and DevOps people at our disposal to help us run our hosting environment, which actually meant to, instead of one person on our team being able to set up sites and set up servers and things like that, every developer on our team was able to, work with that team, right? If we all of a sudden had 5 new websites that we had to launch, right? Like that's a big deal for our company because we're a 14-person web development agency, but that's not a big deal to a large scalable infrastructure, like Cloudways, right? And so what we do with our clients at UGURUS, for example, is we really look at the different services they're offering, whether it's web development, whether it's design, whether it's hosting, and we start to abstract the fulfillment role away from the core account management and strategy infrastructure. So, the examples there's a service called Dear Designer, who's Design Pickle's another example, right? Where you've got these very scalable 50, 100, 200, 300 person teams that you can tap into as an agency, and you can produce, as much design as you want, right? Whether it's, Dude Agency or Unlimited WP development shops, right? Go WP, where you can tap into their massive HR network to hire developers, and you can abstract those highly technical roles. So let's say, for example, a random web development agency has like a WordPress developer. Well, that WordPress developer has to be like the jack of all trades. They have to know like e-commerce, all the different builders, the server, the hosting environment, right? Versus being able to tap into Unlimited WP, who has 50 developers. They have like 3 people who are probably some of the top WooCommerce experts in the world, right? But maybe your business doesn't use WooCommerce, right? So they have other people who are focused on like small business websites and things like that. So abstracting those highly technical roles away from the core agency business model can create huge benefits, right? So that you're not having like a developer who you're freaking out about not keeping busy, or you have a Facebook ads expert or a designer who, when they're not busy, like it's dead weight on your payroll. And so shifting that stuff away and then really focusing on what your agency does well, which is probably that core strategy, the project management, the client relationship. So if you can start to wrap your head around that idea, what we found in practice, Chip, is agencies become a lot more profitable and scalable, which I think is a good recipe, depending on what your goals are.
Well, certainly, hopefully you're profitable and you're focused on profits, because if not, why are you in business? But I think that what you focused on there is the value of elasticity from a manpower perspective. You're able to adjust as needed, whether you have spikes or dealing with the valleys. But the other piece of that is getting access to a level of talent that would be difficult for you to hire in-house for whatever reason, whether it's just not the kind of thing where that kind of person is going to want to work full-time for your agency, or you can't afford it, or whatever. And so both for elasticity and for the expertise, you can get a lot of value by finding ways to outsource these roles, whether it's to an individual, a company, a service, etc. And so I think it's really valuable advice for us to sort of wind down this conversation on, to be thinking about how you can do that within your own agency to allow you to focus on what you do best.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better, Chip.
So if someone wants to find out what you do best and how to find you and talk to you, where can they find you and UGURUS and the Cloudways Agency Partner Program and all that?
Yeah. So, Chip, if people want more information about UGURUS and the business coaching and training we do for agency owners, check us out at UGURUS.com. That's UGURUS.com. For those that are interested in Cloudways, we have an agency partner program. I've been working with them to help develop this, and it's currently kind of in pre-launch, and you can check that out at cloudways.com/agency. Simple enough.
Excellent. Well, Brent, this has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom with my audience, and I look forward to continuing our conversations in the months and years ahead.
Awesome. Great to be here, Chip. Thank you.
Again, my guest today has been Brent Weaver, the founder of UGURUS and a Cloudways Maverick.